Hey guys, oh my God, I'm so sorry for the tech issues, and you're so sweet to just trickle on over to the new one and come on in and talk to me. So I'm so fed up with YouTube because when I schedule live chats, okay, they're all ready to go, everything's great. And then for some reason, when I switch over on my browser, it says YouTube is not found. And then all of these tech issues happen. So, like, I'm fed up with YouTube, but it is what it is. Glad to see that some of you have trickled over from the last live to this live. I hope that the ones who have their what do you call those bell alerts on, that they will say that, okay, I'm at another area. And as a matter of fact, just because a lot of you have wanted this video today, I'm going to copy this link and make sure that everybody knows that I'm over on this stream. Oh my God, if I can paste it. I don't know why it's not pasting. So I'm going to try my very best tonight to talk about intergenerational trauma. And then I'm also going to loop in some other information that may be useful. Here we go. Okay, so I'm posting in the community section that I had to do a new live stream. So hopefully you guys will be okay with that. Let me acknowledge some of you that are already here. Hello, Courtney Frazier. Nice to see you. Hello, Fairy Girl. Welcome. Nice to see you as well. Jern Davis. Nice to see you as well. Welcome to the chat. We also have Green Dragon. Hello, welcome to the chat. And then let me just scroll down and make sure I'm not missing anybody else. Okay, I think I got all of you. I just want to make sure. No. Green Dragon says, thank you for clarifying that it was problems on my side and not her side. So, or your side. Not a problem at all. Hello, Annabis, the opener of ways. Welcome to the chat. I'm so sorry about the tech issues. Hello, Cheryl. Welcome to the chat. So glad to see you. Hello, Donald Adams. Welcome to the chat. So glad to see you as well. Hello, Daryl Sandifer. Welcome to the chat. So glad to see you. Natasha, wonderful to see you as well. So glad to see you guys. Did I miss anybody? Soul Success. Hello, welcome to the channel. Yes, you're welcome. You're welcome. Let me just plug in my charger here, okay? Because I don't want to run on E and then some other tech issues happen. I honestly think therapists should be schooled in how to use YouTube. That's what I think. Because when things go wrong, I'm like, what do I do? So, but I'm glad to see most of you here. Hello, Melissa Surly. I hope I have that right. Welcome to the chat. So glad to see you. Green Dragon said I had an episode earlier today, so my speech is weird. Oh, I'm so sorry about that. I'm going to mention that actually, and I want to come back to that just because that's a part of trauma. We're going to talk about that in tonight's video. I'm going to try to wrap up at a reasonable time, 9:40. Okay. So let's jump in. Okay. So let me just share with you something that I've been sharing with a lot of you on this channel. One is that my book just came out today through my publishing company, the Racial Trauma Handbook for Teens, and it's been a pretty good success so far. And I'm so grateful I get to do all the things that they have planned, all the traveling, all the interviews, all the stuff. It's just so humbling to be able to share a work that has been a collaboration between me and New Harbinger Publications. So it's a wonderful experience, and I'm so glad that I get to share it with all of you. I will show you. This is what it looks like for those of you who did not know or didn't see it or you missed it. It really is a small handbook. That's really what it is. You stick it in your purse, you stick it in your bag or your backpack. There's a lot of things in here that relates to trauma in general. Right. So the book is for adolescents, but the reality of intergenerational trauma is that we all experience intergenerational trauma, and it isn't just an adolescent thing. Right. So although the book is for adolescents, you can actually open it up and read some things in here for yourself. And I'm going to point that out at the end of this chat. So stay with me, because you can buy this book, maybe give it to a teenager that you know, right? But I encourage you to do some of these activities in here because it's all treatment for intergenerational trauma. Okay, so we'll get back to that later in the chat. I also want to walk you through briefly, if we have enough time, an awesome way to conceptualize your trauma. So we'll go through that briefly because I think this can be something you can do on your own at home to kind of help you process what you've experienced. So I just want to make sure that I'm not missing anybody. And thank you so much, Cheryl. I appreciate that. Thank you. I just want to make sure I'm not skipping any of you. I'm going to come back and read your comments for sure. All right. So let's start with intergenerational trauma. There are three major pieces of trauma that I think a lot of us experience. And it's something we don't hear much of because I think we're so focused on trauma. Trauma is such a general kind of a term that we don't know that there are actually kinds of trauma, different types of trauma. Now, let me highlight. There's family trauma, there's intergenerational trauma, there's individual trauma, and there's racial trauma. The three big pieces to this is family trauma, individual trauma, and racial trauma. Let me start with family trauma. Family trauma entails any kind of situation that has traumatized you. You were not prepared for it. You didn't anticipate it. You didn't have the coping skills to manage it. You felt thrown off emotionally, psychologically, right? Something has happened to you that shook up your world. And it didn't happen to you as an individual, it has happened to your family, right? So it's like a collective trauma, a family trauma, right? And that trauma can be passed down for many generations, from your ancestors to your great grandmother to your great great aunt, and it can pass down. And I'm gonna highlight intergenerational trauma in a minute, okay? Because I think that's going to help you conceptualize family trauma a little bit better. Then there's also individual trauma, right? And that's when individually you experience specific kinds of trauma, and it has impacted you in such a way that now you have to live your life as a result of that trauma. You have to live your life changing patterns of behavior, right? Implementing coping skills and really trying to survive in a different way. Racial trauma is what my book is about. It is, basically a collection of experiences, multiple experiences of marginalization, disenfranchisement, discrimination based on the color of your skin. And it's one incident after the next incident after the next incident, and it can continue on, right? Anything that you are not anticipating, that you are able to cope with or experience, and then use coping skills to manage, is considered a trauma. So anything that was unexpected, anything that you don't have coping skills to manage, is a trauma, right? So intergenerational trauma starts way, way back, right? Great grandma, great aunts. It could be your ancestors. It could be people before your ancestors, right? Something happens down that way down in the bloodline. It could be a history of sexual molestation within the family. It could be a history of cold, callous hearts and minds in the family, right? Sociopaths, narcissists, psychopaths, right? It could be anything that really derails the functionality of your family over time. And it starts back there and it trickles all the way down to you. Now, my family personally, and part of my story is in my book in a variety of different ways. So you kind of have to find my story in there. But my story is that my family has intergenerational trauma. There's two different bloodlines that runs through my veins, but unfortunately, there's a lot of attitudes about it. There's a lot of prejudice, discrimination. There's a lot of segregation. But then, way down in my ancestral pool, there's also a lot of heartache and a lot of suffering and a lot of anger within the family that was never addressed. There's a lot of envy in the family that was never addressed. There's competition, and the list goes on. And so all of that has trickled all the way down to me. I'm over the age of 35. So it trickled all the way down to me, and it still impacts me unto this day. For you, it could be a family history of, let's say, prejudice and discrimination. If you're biracial, multiracial, or multi-ethnic, however you describe yourself, it could be years and years of discrimination on another side of the part of your family, right? It could also be a history of child molestation. It could be lots of trauma, PTSD. And what happens is family members over time begin to interact in unhealthy ways. They begin to perceive reality in unhelpful ways. They begin to, kind of take on this attitude about life that's not healthy. And some people shut down and close up, right? And they never want to talk about the trauma. It's embarrassing, it's hurtful, it's humiliating, right? Whatever the issue may be. And so that family member may spread intentionally or unintentionally certain attitudes, ideas, ways of thinking about the world, ways of interacting with the world, right? Defense mechanisms, fear, anxiety. They may pass all that down to all the generations within your family. And so that's the foundation of intergenerational trauma. It's something happened way back there and it never gotten taken care of. And so all the way down to who we are in 2023, I was going to say 2020, that's not right. 2023, it's impacted you because it never has been dealt with appropriately. Now, there is a topic. Hello, I just saw you, Ronald Zion. There's a lot of you signing on, so I'm going to make sure I get to you, I promise. But there's another thing that you guys may have heard of, and it's called epigenetics. Epigenetics. It's basically the idea that, DNA is kind of altered by external and internal stimuli. I'll put it that way. I'll try to make it as less scientific as I can. But epigenetics really has a lot to do with DNA, genetic codes, or something that we call, it's the scientific word, it's called epigenetic tags. And if you kind of conceptualize this with me, it's like, how do I want to put this? It's like your DNA is floating through your bloodstream. I'm going to try to do my best to make this very practical. DNA is flowing through your bloodstream, right? The epigenetic tags are just floating around with it, and it attaches to different parts of your DNA, attaches to that part of your DNA, attaches to that part of your DNA, right? And so then you have all these epigenetic tags that are influenced by a variety of things, okay? So epigenetics is the study of how these tags impact your DNA. And sometimes the impact of trauma, family trauma, individual trauma, racial trauma, intergenerational trauma can all leave an imprint on your DNA. And so then you are born into the world. And I'm going to talk more about this. So, if you want more information about this, just let me know in the chat box, the comment section, whatever. But when you are born into the world, guess what? All those epigenetic tags that have been attached onto your DNA are now impacting what you're going to be vulnerable to in your world and what you're going to be defensive against, right? So risk factors, I've talked about that a lot on this channel. Those are things that impact you in a negative way. They make it easier for you to end up in a bad situation. Poor grades, poor educational system, poverty, health conditions, being born with drugs in your system, being neglected and abused, experiencing trauma, all of that stuff, right? So kind of think of these tags, these epigenetic tags, kind of think of them as blemishes in a sense, and they attach and they change the direction of your life in some ways. Now, does it happen for all children that are born? No, but there are some people who are more susceptible. Again, they're called risk factors. It makes you more vulnerable. These are things that makes you more vulnerable to having a hard time in life. And so if these genetic tags are attached to your DNA, and your family or that mother who's carrying you has a history of trauma, high levels of cortisol, mental health issues, the list goes on, then you're going to be brought into this world, born into this world with these tags that is going to control what's going to come about in you. And sometimes you can have a almost like a traumatic response, right? You're almost born into this world vulnerable to trauma. And so that's epigenetics. Okay. I want to go to the chat box before we jump into what intergenerational trauma is. And I'm going to give you guys some specific things that may prove and show you have this in your family. Okay. But I want to go back, make sure I'm not missing anybody. Oh, okay. Melissa Surly says, hello, how do I share this? So the way that you can do that is if you go to I'm so sorry, I missed you, by the way. I just looked at that. What I would do is click on to your web browser, somehow highlight it, copy it, and then paste it. I hope that helps. I don't know if I'm telling you the right thing. Hopefully that helps. Let me know. Um, okay. Thank you very much, Jern. Thank you very much, Cheryl. Thank you. Yeah, that's great, Green Dragon. Wonderful. I'm going to highlight two activities in the book tonight that you can use as an adult. Yeah, racial disparity, profiling, stumbling blocks, etc. Yes, fairy girl. Yep, all those things can impact whether you have intergenerational trauma or not, or family trauma, individual trauma. Now, let me just say this before I start answering some of your chats and your questions, that in my book, I make a clear distinction between family trauma and individual trauma, because what happened in your family that traumatized you could be very different from what traumatized you as an individual person, right? What traumatizes one person doesn't have to traumatize another person. So, as you're listening to this chat tonight, you want to keep in mind, what's my individual trauma versus my family's trauma, right? Because you can be impacted by their trauma, but you're also a thinking, breathing individual on your own. And so, how has that trauma impacted just you within that family context? So that's important to kind of separate and keep in mind. Southern Boss Lady says, "Hi, my beautiful sister Tama. Hello, welcome to the chat. So glad to see you. Thank you for coming." Luna, hello, welcome to the chat. So glad to see you. Courtney Fraser says, "I am wondering if hearing a siren before the what? The quarry near my house before they do a blast, and thinking it is an air raid siren is intergenerational trauma, just my PTSD, or a combination of both." Okay, I botched that whole thing up. So what you're saying, Courtney, and I'll clarify it for you guys. She's asking, like, is my reaction to this loud noise, is this a consequence of my trauma, intergenerational trauma, PTSD, or both? I'm going to say it could be all of the above, right? You don't know, maybe, Courtney, how intergenerational trauma from way back there has impacted you all the way into now, right? And little things that you've experienced over time that caused your own PTSD is also a layer, right? So we've got intergenerational trauma, we've got your PTSD on top of that, right? And what was the other thing? You said, or a combination of both, right? So think of it as a combination of the two: intergenerational trauma and PTSD. When you have intergenerational trauma, you are more susceptible to experiencing post-traumatic stress disorder, right? Because again, remember those epigenetic tags, those DNA tags, those blemishes we said, that kind of changes the direction of your genetic code. It kind of changes the direction of things, right? So intergenerational trauma can make you more susceptible to suffering from PTSD. And of course, that's in my book. All right. Hello, Noble Zone. Nice to see you. Welcome to the chat. Says, "I made it." Yes. Hi, Doc. Wishing you well and thank you. Yeah, you're welcome. I'm glad you made it too. I was like, oh my God, I'm having technical issues again. I'm like, oh my God, I feel so bad for them. So I'm glad you were able to make it. Thank you. All right. Dragon Man Sesson. Hello. Good evening. Welcome to the chat. Glad to see you as well. Ronald Zion, I pointed you out earlier. Welcome to the chat. Fairy Girl says, "My family of origin was steeped in that dysfunction and I couldn't um Ooh, I'm getting lost at the end of that sentence. I'm just going to take the beginning of that. My family of origin was steeped in that dysfunction." Okay, I'm just going to pull that out and just say that sounds like intergenerational trauma. And I'm going to talk about this in a little bit here. That anytime you feel sucked into family trauma, you might want to start asking yourself, is this just a situation between us because we're dysfunctional, we're toxic, for lack of a clinical term, or we're just complicated as a family? Or is this exchange or interaction in my family the result or consequence of years and years of individual, if I can speak, of intergenerational trauma? I had a client a couple of minutes before I was live tonight, and it was a family session. And the one client that I had was like, "How do I know that our interactions are not the result of intergenerational trauma?" And so my explanation to this individual, highly intelligent 19-year-old, said, I explained to her, well, here's what you need to look for. Is this just a toxic pattern between us as a unit? Or did this toxic patterns, happen with grandma and grandpa? Did this happen with, great aunt Nisi and Nusu, right? Did this happen with my dad's dad? And if you can say yes to all of those things, it's intergenerational trauma. It's just been passed down to you in some fashion through attitude, behavior, belief systems, whatever. Okay. And if you buy my book, you will get a little bit more clarified information on what I mean by that. All right, let's keep going, guys. Hello, Caitlin Brown. Welcome to the chat. So glad to see you. Um, yes, Ronald Diane says unhealthy coping skills. Yep, agree. Wow, Green Dragon says WW2, the Great Depression impacts my family. Yeah, absolutely. If you have, like, we're kind of in a recession now. Some people say, don't say the R word, but like, I think we are. I think we're pretty much going downhill, and in some really small ways. We're not doing so good. And that can be traumatizing for kids. It can be traumatizing for adults. I had someone consult with me last week who is experiencing individual trauma, not so much because of family trauma or intergenerational trauma, but more so because her life has been completely flipped upside down through death, through loss of income, through loss of employment. She was going to try to get into the Marines. They denied her for some reasons. Like, there's a lot of different things happening to her, and her individual trauma is the result of, as you say, green dragon, it's like this financial loss. It's the recession that we're in. It's all of these changes of everyday life that has caused her individual trauma. She also has family trauma. So again, it's compounding the issue. Her individual trauma and then her family trauma is not helping the whole situation. Blessed in every area of my life. Hello, welcome to the chat. So glad to see you. Says, I am the generational curse breaker. Yeah, absolutely. Me too. And that's a powerful position to be in, isn't it? And you can kind of hold your head up high knowing that, okay, I broke that. And I broke that because I did A, B, and C. Let's say for those of you who may not have broke that generational curse, it doesn't mean you're any less than. It just means that you haven't found the right steps to take to end up where you want to be. That's the way I would conceptualize that. Okay, let me keep going, guys. Yeah, Luna. Yep, she's following, or he's following. Cheryl says, I'm using a deliverance minister and now also having to be deprogrammed. I was adopted and can't remember my childhood. Can that run in families? Yeah, absolutely. Having the inability to kind of grasp what's going on in your past or your childhood, I wouldn't say necessarily that that is specifically something that can run in families. But here's what I will say: the fight or flight system can run in families. How it reacts to things can run in families. So if we're talking epigenetics, let's say the mom who brought you into the world has a high level of cortisol, a high level of dopamine in her system, right? Low levels of serotonin. So she's highly stressed and then she's depressed, right? That can run in families through the bloodline, which makes you, Cheryl, for example, more vulnerable to things like poor memory, not being able to remember your trauma, right? Attitudes and moods you may go in and out of. So that's that puzzle, right? The memory itself can't run in families, but the chemicals beneath what causes the memory issues can run in families, if that makes sense. That was a great question. Thank you for that. Um, oh, good. Okay, Melissa, that's good to know. Yes, you're welcome. Ronald Zion says, "Where can I order your book? Where all books are sold." So I had somebody online the other day. They're like, "I want to buy several copies. Where do I go?" Where all books are sold, and you may be able to walk into your Barnes and Noble and just get it off the shelf. I did that today just as a fun, let me see what's on the shelf kind of thing, and to sign some books. So go into your nearest Barnes and Noble, see if it's there. If not, they will go ahead and order that for you. You can do Amazon, which I love, and feel free to leave a review, good or bad. You can also go to Books a Million, booksamillion.com, and then you can go to my publisher's website, new Harbinger Publications.com, and you can find it that way as well. So All right, so I'm gonna keep going, guys. Majoli Clan, hopefully. Thank you so much. And I'm sorry you had to go. It's me going over time. Sorry about that. But thank you so much for the support. All right. Hello, Cherries Jubilee. Welcome to the chat. So glad to see you. Jacob, hello. Welcome to the chat. Okay. All right. Let me finish the rest of this, guys, because yes, you're welcome, Green Dragon. Yeah, you're welcome. Yes, you're welcome, Cheryl. No problem. All right, let me get you guys through these last things, two activities from the book that you can use for yourself, and then we're gonna wrap up because I have to get out of here. I gotta go, and you guys have to go to bed at some point if you're in my time zone. So how do you know if there's intergenerational trauma within your family? Well, the first thing that I usually highlight to my clients is unresolved emotions and poor mental health treatment. So here's what I mean by that: when you have unresolved emotions within your family and no one has openly spoken about it, nobody has processed it, nobody has really thrown themselves into healing, it's going to create attitudes and behaviors that's going to negatively impact you over time. So unresolved emotions, unresolved trauma, unresolved thought patterns, all of that stuff can be passed down from one generation to the next. And you might be able to look back through some small research or introspection, look back over your lineage and kind of ask yourself, was my great grandmother an open person about issues, or did she cover things up? Are there big family secrets, or are things covered up? Were we able to openly communicate about feelings, or was that kind of looked down upon, right? And if all the answers to that is yes, it came from somewhere, right, guys? And it most likely came from generations before you. The next thing is a repeated pattern of negative behaviors throughout generations within the family, right? Negative patterns of behavior get passed on. You have probably seen or even experienced families where everybody in the family has an issue, right? You may have known a family where the husband was an infidel, right? He cheated, then his son cheated, then his son's son cheated, right? Then the uncle cheated on his wife, and then the cousin cheated on her wife, or his wife and her husband. It's like that can just run through generations, right? So, negative behavioral patterns. There's also complicated personalities because going back to epigenetics and DNA, personality disorders are highly genetic, highly genetic. And so somebody who has a narcissistic personality can raise children who have the same genetic code and they can become narcissists. And maybe there are their children, so the grandchildren who then become narcissists. Borderline personality disorder has a genetic foundation. Antisocial personality disorder also has a genetic foundation, right? So personality disorders. The other thing too is I think a history of substance abuse is something that can be passed down from one generation to the next. Dad was an alcoholic. Now the daughter is using drugs to self-medicate. Now she's addicted. And the daughter now brings a baby into the world who is drug addicted. And that baby struggles. And then that baby grows up and has a baby who is also drug addicted. And it could just go on for generations. It's a series of negative and harmful patterns within a family that really changes or shifts or thwarts your ability to live a healthy and stable life, right? That's intergenerational trauma. There's also patterns that may be negative within a family about how to live life, what life is all about, right? Styles and way of parenting and thinking and processing can also result in intergenerational trauma. I think when I first started in this field 14 years ago, I counseled a family where the mother believed in corporal punishment, spanking. The dad believed in it. The siblings believed in it because my client was a 6-year-old child who was being spanked. But here's where it got toxic. Okay, so this is intergenerational trauma. Mom was okay with spanking, right? And using physical punishment. Dad was just as okay with it. But here's where it got strange. They allowed the other siblings to take the role of the disciplinarian. So who do you think grabbed that belt? Who do you think grabbed that shoe, right? It was the siblings. And that was the most toxic dynamic I'd ever seen. And it took a series of sessions, a series of me kicking out the parents, a series of the parents getting upset with me for telling them off in front of their children that this is not okay. And so, unfortunately, mom had been abused. And that is why she thought that kind of corporal punishment was okay. It's okay to hit someone with an extension cord, is what she told me. It's okay to hit somebody with a fly wasp, not a fly wasp. We call those things, guys, a fly swatter. It's okay to hit somebody with that. And it's okay to let my other son do it to my other son. And so, that was some intense intergenerational trauma. And let me tell you, I needed so much consultation at that time. And my car rides home was so depressing because that pattern of intergenerational trauma was so toxic. So, even parenting styles can be passed down from one generation to the next. Let me also throw in rejection. That's another thing that can be passed down throughout generations and impact you in a negative way. Maybe you were rejected because you're the lighter skinned person in your family. Maybe you were rejected because, your father wasn't your biological father, it was your stepfather. Maybe you were rejected because you have multiple bloodlines in your veins, right? You're multi-ethnic, multiracial, whatever the case. All of that can get passed down from generation to generation and impact you for the rest of your life. I just want to make sure that I'm not missing something. So I'm kind of pondering, am I missing something? No, I think we're going to pause there because I'm going to do a video pretty soon and I'll make this a little bit more comprehensive. So stay tuned for that. Let me give you guys 2 activities before we go. Okay. And I'm going to go to the chat box and make sure that I answer some of your chats, and then we get to go home. So if you buy this book in chapter 2, or part 2, I should say, okay, there is a chapter called Coping with Trauma Inside of Your Body, Coping with Racial Trauma Within Your Body. And even if you're not having a racial trauma experience, these activities are kind of good to pull from. The first activity is something known as the Cognitive Behavior Triangle, or the CBT Triangle. And here it is right here. Okay, this is how it looks. And the CBT triangle basically says this, that there is a relationship. Here's a worksheet to kind of help me explain this. There's a relationship between thoughts, feelings, or emotions. It's backwards on my screen, and behaviors. So thoughts, feelings, and behaviors. There's a connection between the two. A situation can occur. Then we have a thought, most likely a negative one, maybe a self-defeating thought, right? Then it causes us to feel a certain way. And then in return, we behave a certain way. So let's talk about intergenerational trauma in this triangle. Let's say, for example, the situation is this, that your father is a narcissist. He abuses you. He talks to you like you have absolutely no intelligence, no smarts, nothing. He belittles you. That's the situation in your case. What are your thoughts going to be? Well, dad doesn't love me. He never loved me. He's mean. He's cruel. He's hurtful. He's A, B, and C, right? That's your thoughts. And you may even start to think, I'm unworthy of love. He doesn't love me, right? If we're talking about racial trauma, you may think, I'm never going to be accepted in society, no matter how smart I am, no matter how pretty I am, handsome, talented. I'm never going to be anything, right? What do you think that thought is going to do? It's going to impact your emotions. And when you are driving the car and the car is full of emotions, you're going to wreck. That's the analogy I use with most of my clients. If you're overwhelmed with emotion, you're not going to think well, right? And so then your behaviors follow those intense emotions. And sometimes that's shutting down, that's giving up, that's saying, you know what, I'm not doing this anymore. I'm going to take my life. I'm going to push away from the table. I'm done, right? So I encourage you to use this. I will try to post it in the comment section below for you. Okay. This is a really good therapeutic tool. I literally hug this thing because I use it in every session. I'm not kidding you, every session. All right. So that is one. And then and I want you guys to do this on your own if you'd like. And the chapter is called Overcoming Your Fear. And it's chapter 5. Okay. So I know it's a little hard to see on screen, but chapter 5 is basically an exploration of how fear has impacted you negatively. So you want to go to page 99 and you want to go to your story. It's an activity. And I give you a bunch of prompts on how to write your original story and then how to rewrite your story. And this is all about trauma. It could be racial, it could be individual, it can be family based trauma, right? I'm giving you an outline. I'm giving you prompts to kind of process, explore within your heart, explore within your soul what happened to you and why a certain thing was traumatic to you. Okay, guys. So I love talking to you. I wish I could stay on, but I literally have to run out of this office. I want to answer these though. Oof, let me see if I can answer some of these guys. Yeah, so Daryl Sadaford says toxic dysfunction. Oh my God. I mean, it's beyond toxic dysfunction for sure. Um, Laura D, hello, welcome to the chat. So glad to see you. I'm signing off now, but welcome to the chat. Says children and teens are the barometers that act out all the subterranean traits, yeah, tensions and unspoken secrets of the family, often acting out and responding to events they don't fully understand. My God, that is the most beautifully said I have ever heard. Seriously, because I do believe in that, and this is why I wrote this book for teenagers. I'm not only a child and family therapist; I'm also an adolescent therapist, and so most of my kids come into the office like I had tonight, and the first thing I say to the parent is, I want to talk to the child first because I need to understand what's going on up here, what's going on in here, right? So you're right, they are barometers, and for the most part, they're straight to the point. So if you need to ask them what's going on in the family, they'll just tell you, oh, dad's having an affair. One time that happened in a session, and I'm like, oh my God, because they are straight to the point. They are barometers of character as well. So I love kids because they're just so real. They're so real. Okay. I want to make sure I'm not missing anything because I literally am. Yes, Luna is agreeing with the conversation. Everybody is collaborating. Okay. All right, guys, I'm going to sign off. I'm going to sign off. I have to. I love you guys. I promise I'm gonna come back and do this again. Next week, I should have another live chat. We might bring some of this up again. Let me know in the comment section below if you want me to focus on this some more. Hi V, I just saw you. Welcome to the chat. Hello. Yes, you're welcome, Luna. Thank you for coming. Um, I will do this again. Oh, thank you. I just saw that. My heartfelt congratulations on the book, Tamara. Oh, thank you so much, V. I love that. Thank you. Um, if you want me to come back and do this topic again, I certainly will do that. Hopefully, I don't have an intense family session and I'll be more cognizant. So love you guys. Oh, thank you, Cheryl. Love you guys so much. Thank you, Daryl. Yes, absolutely. I certainly will. And I'm going to give you guys just in case you don't buy this book because it's not really relevant to you, I will dig in here for next chat and I will bring out some tools that I give to those who read this book on how to heal from this intergenerational trauma. Okay, so I will bring that back. Yes, hello, empowered woman. I certainly will. I certainly will. All right, guys, love you so much. I'll see you soon. Have a good night and thank you for the support. Thank you. Bye bye.